everyone. This is a totally different subject I want to talk about now. I plan to speak a little bit more about the Wizard of Oz someday, but this is something I have been studying for a while, and I decided to share it with you. And the subject of this video is Synastry, the comparison between two charts, sometimes between more than two, but usually two charts. I know that most of what is said about it online revolves around love relationships, and I have nothing against it. Love is a fairly important thing in our lives. People must get every help they can to navigate through life and through relationships, and it's okay. The only thing that bugs me a little is that people underutilize Synastry, even for love relationships. Clients usually come to us, to astrologers, in the beginning of a relationship and basically want the astrologer to tell them good things about the relationship. And it mostly confirms what in some level they already know. You kind of know why you like the person you're in a relationship with. But when things get difficult, when things get hard, this is when a synastry could help more by pointing out difficulties and assessing these difficulties in an objective way, and hopefully pointing out possible solutions. But I'm not going to talk about a love synastry. I'm going to talk about a synastry between disciple and master, or between student and teacher. Why? Because as I said, most of what is talked about synastry online deals with relationships. So why make another video about love relationships when synastry can be used for so much more? So these are the charts for two thinkers, two writers and metaphysicians of the 20th century. The one on the left is the chart of René Guénon, the French metaphysician and author. He was born in France, in the city of Blois. And the one on the right is the chart of Frihtjof Schuon, the Swiss metaphysician and writer who was a disciple of René Guénon. And I'm not going to say anything about their relationship now. I'm going to save it for the end of the video. But let's see if we can predict how it went by looking at their charts. I'm not going to judge any of them, or this video would take forever, but I decided to start it by showing the two charts without any note, without any of the things I've inserted in them. You're going to see it in a couple of seconds, Because if you are an astrologer, or if you like astrology, you can stop the video and take a look at their charts and try to assess them if you want to. I'm just going to point out a couple of things, because I think these things might be of interest, and I think these things are almost always of interest when we are comparing charts from people. The first thing is the temperament. I'm not going to enter in details of how I calculate it, how I judge it, how I assess it. There are several different methods, but most of them would agree that the chart on the left is either melancholic, or at least colder and drier than the chart on the right. And most methods would agree that the chart on the right is sanguine, or at least way hotter and moister than the chart on the left. More than that, both their moons and their Mercuries are not exactly the same. René Guénon's Mercury here at the left is in a mutable fire sign, involved with heat, with fire, with color, with action, in a mutable way, while Frihtjof Schuon has his Mercury in the cardinal water sign. The element of desires, emotions, of feelings. Which of them would be more devoted to art, to this aesthetic part of life? The one on the right. And it's true. Schuon was also a painter, and if I'm not mistaken, he had done some poetry. The moon. René Guénon's moon is in a cold and dry phase. It has passed the opposition to the sun, but it has not reached the last square to the sun, so it's in the cold and dry phase. It's third phase. So its inner motivation is earth, concreteness, but it manifests through water. While Schuon's moon is, on the other hand, in the first phase, the hot and moist phase, the airy phase. So, what is the inner motivation of this moon? Air, thought, reason, discourse. But it manifests through earth, through mutable earth. So, while the second one might seem a bit more set in his ways, the first one is really like that. Yep, so let's have a quick comparison of their charts. and then I'll explain why we shouldn't do what I am going to do now. This is how Synastry tends to go, at least judging from what I see online. I'm not saying every consultation is like that, but at least when people are talking about it, this is how it goes. The astrologer sometimes make a brief assessment of the charts, sometimes not, and they jump right into comparing the charts, that is, pointing out coincidences in the strictest sense of the word, things that are in the same place in both charts. So here we have the first thing that catches my attention is in Frihtjof Schuon's chart there is this conjunction of the part of fortune and Venus, and it is right on Pluto. I know many people don't like using Pluto, so if you're listening to this and you don't like it, just ignore it. But it's hard to ignore, at least visually for me, because it's very close. Well, what does it mean? I don't know. Venus rules the third and the eighth house in Schuon's chart, and none of them makes sense. But it could mean Venus as love, as harmony, as union, and Fortuna as, I don't know, what his soul wants. So this is conjunct Pluto in René Guénon's chart. Sorry. Guénon's ascendant is right here, conjunct Frihtjof Schuon's Pluto, and not very far from its sun, from his sun, but I don't think it's close enough to consider, as I don't think, that's why I didn't circle it, René Guénon's Mercury and Frihtjof Schuon's midheaven. It is important, this one here, and I'm going to talk about why I think it's important a bit later, but it is important because of other things in the chart. But even if you want to consider both, we have Schuon's Sun and Pluto on Guénon's ascendant, and Guénon's Mercury on Schuon's ascendant. So whatever Mercury signifies in René Guénon's chart has an influence on Schuon's chart. So Mercury rules the first and the fifth in Guénon's charts. So he himself, René Guénon, has an influence in Schuon's career. Good, but we already know that, because if they were master and disciple, it's quite probable, that he will have an impact on his career, on his action in the world. Is it good? Is it bad? I don't know yet. Another thing that catches the eye is this conjunction, a bit closer, between Saturn in Guénon's chart and Mercury in Schuon's chart. So Saturn rules Guénon's 10th house of career and 9th and 11th houses too. So these things have an impact on Schuon's 4th house ruler, or Schuon's relation to other people, because Mercury rules the 7th. If you notice, this is a particularly difficult example, but that's on purpose. It's not easy to assess what kind of relationship they had just by pointing out these coincidences. Is it a good relationship? Is it easy? Is it difficult? How does it play out? And it doesn't get much better when we factor in the Antisha. Take a look. If anyone here doesn't know what an Antician is, very briefly, is an alternative position. You imagine a mirror passing through 0 Cancer and 0 Capricorn, and everything in the zodiac. On the left side of this mirror has an alternative position on the right side of this mirror, and vice versa. So the moon here is the first thing I circled in yellow, because its addition is at 18 Gemini. 18 Gemini is right at the 4th cusp of Schuon's chart. So the moon has an impact, or has something to do with his 4th house. Again, the 4th house. But if you look at the René Guénon's chart, and you see where the intention of Mercury lies, it is at 14 Capricorn. So while the moon emphasizes the 4th house, Mercury emphasizes this tight Jupiter-Mars conjunction. But the last thing that I circled is Schuon's ascendant and René Guénon's Jupiter, which are conjunct by Antition, sorry. But this is more or less a mess. Okay, I'm exaggerating a bit. It's not impossible to assess their relationship from these points, but it is loose. And the purpose of this video is to show you why it is loose. We see connection. We see many points that touch each other, many points in one chart that touch the other. But it's hard to tell if they are good connections or bad connections, and if they mean an easy relationship or a difficult relationship, a relationship that a relationship from which both profit, a relationship from which one of them profits, a relationship that harms both of them, a relationship that involves learning. If One will be a good disciple, and the other will be a good master, a good teacher. And this is why I made this video, because most people, when doing Synastry, skip a crucial step. And I'm going to show you this crucial step now. And that means all these markings will disappear, and I'm going to make other markings on these charts. What is this crucial step, and what are these markings for? Well, the crucial step is looking at each chart separately and trying to find patterns, and then comparing the relevant patterns. If we're talking about a relationship, we look at one chart and find the patterns for relationships, and then we look at the other chart and find those patterns and see how they match. Then we go to the charts and look at the connections, knowing how the relationship will tend to go because due to the pairing of those patterns. So for example, if someone has the tendency to marry people that have an eye on their money, this could play out in very different this could play out differently in different scenarios. If the person marries another person that does not look, that has no special interest in their money, the relationship will play out in a certain way. If this person marries someone who has an eye on other people's money but tend to increase it, it will play in another way. If they marry someone who has an eye on other people's money and tend to spend it without increasing it, it will play out in another way. This is just an example among many. But here we're not talking about love relationships. We're talking about teacher and master, or pupil and master, disciple and master, or these things and teacher. So we have to look at how René Guénon's chart shows us how he tends to behave in relation to students, to disciples. And then we look at how Frihtjof Schuon's chart tells us how he tends to relate to teachers and masters. And then we compare these two patterns, and then we look at the connections. So how are these things shown in René Guénon's chart? Well, he is signified in his own chart, first by Mercury, because Mercury is the ruler of the ascendant, and secondarily by the moon. If the sun had no role, we could possibly bring him here, but I wouldn't recommend it. The sun is too general in charts. It's better to stick with the ruler of the first house and take a look at the moon. And students, pupils, apprentices are usually shown by the third house. So the relationship patterns between him and students tend to be the relationship patterns between Mercury and secondarily the Moon and the ruler of the third house, which is the Sun. How is Mercury in relation to the Sun? Well, it pretty much ignores it. It is not in any deep relationship to it. Does it mean he doesn't like his students? No. It means what it means. It doesn't show any particular tendency to that. It's not a very important thing in the chart. But how are the students? How is the Sun? Well, the Sun is in the fixed water sign, Scorpio. It has no relationship, it doesn't have any strong relationship with Mercury. But as I said, we could have a look also at the Moon. The Moon has nothing in particular, no, no particular intention to the Sun. It has the same affinity that Mercury has, which is none. But the Sun has. The Sun is in the fall of the Moon. So, what is the pattern here? He doesn't seem to be a guy who is very devoted to disciples or to students, but there is the potential here of the students to disappoint him or bring him down or harm him in some way. There is the potential for problems. Does it mean that everybody who ever studied with him will have problems? Of course not. If we judge the chart for children, for example, and we see the potential for trouble, it doesn't mean the person will have problems with all his children, all their children. Of course not. But there is this potential here. It's not a big thing, it's not horrible, but we can see it. In the chart of some other people, it might have disappeared. It might not be important, not be relevant. He had more than one student in his life. And who knows, some of their charts would mean that the relationship would be good, would be nice, would benefit both. But there is this potential of not only profiting from it, but maybe being disappointed or harmed or hurt or in any way hindered by it. And how is the corresponding pattern in Schuon's chart? In Schuon's chart, we're not looking at the third. We're not looking at his relationship with his own students, but with intellectual authorities, with people that belong to the ninth house. So he is Jupiter and secondarily the Moon, and teachers, masters are Mars. And how is his chart? That very close, and that very important opposition between an exalted Mars and an exalted Jupiter is a very important and very close opposition between the rulers of the first and of the ninth houses. And this opposition happens in the house and the detriment of the moon. So he has this tendency of opposing ninth house people, of tension, of problems, of a hard relationship. It's hard not to notice that the two planets are the most dignified in the chart. They seem to be the most obviously important planets in the chart. So we're not talking about two bad people fighting, or one very prominent and the other very irrelevant fighting. This seems to be an opposition before two worthy equals. And of course, it doesn't mean that played out in every relationship he has since childhood until his death. Everyone who was a ninth house kind of person with him fell into this opposition. Of course not. Of course not. But we see potential. And how does this potential plays out in comparison to René Guénon's pattern with teachers? It is not a good match. One of them has the potential of being disappointed or harmed by his students. The other has the potential of fighting or having differences, very clear differences, with his teachers or masters. Now, I'm sorry. Now, if we remember the other, the step I showed before this one, but which should be done after this one, this potentially difficult relationship gains more body, more concreteness. It is probably a difficult relationship, but the amount of contacts and the contacts involving the 10th house suggests that this difficult relationship will be important in both their lives, and it will impact their careers, their action in the world. Look, now I'm going to tell you what I know about their relationship. It's not that they were always fighting, or that they threatened to kill each other, or that they hated each other. But that's part of the context. If it's a meaningful relationship between a teacher and a student, and it means the teacher has something to teach the student, and the student wants to learn that something. And the context seem to imply that this relationship is important. So the thing that one is teaching and the other is learning is important to both. And as I said, in both their patterns, René Guénon does not hate students, but there's the potential of this potential for difficulties, and Schuon does not tend to think think his teachers are crap. On the opposite, both of them, of the planets that means him and the planet that signifies other people, are dignified. So if René Guénon found a student which he must teach, this potential could play out in different ways. And when Schuon finds a teacher he deems worthy and wants to learn from it, his potential might play out in different ways. But when we match them, we see room for disagreement, and that's how their relationship was. It was not fight and murder attempts or anything like that. Schuon is probably the most recognized student of Guénon's. And René Guénon at one point said that he was that Schuon was his continuator, his the one who understood what he said and would advance it. But they had very public and well-known differences, and they diverged in life because of these differences. So we can see that this is not an easy relationship. It's not a relationship that the student just lies at the feet of the teacher and the teacher is glad all the time that the student only learns and obeys. This is by any means, this is not what their relationship was like. So this is what I wanted to tell you. This is a crucial step. This is a very important part of the judgment that people tend to skip. And if you listen to it until now and you're an astrologer, I suggest, more than that, I beg you, do not skip this step. Do it. It will make your job easier. It will make your results more informative. It will help you and it will help your clients. That's it for now. Thank you for watching me. Goodbye.